Hello, thank you so much for joining us to learn a little bit more about the Stay Well program and uplifting our communities during this time of pandemic. My name is Erin Wallace. I'm the lead outreach specialist with the Stay Well grant program and will be with you for the duration of this presentation. The Stay Well grant program uses federal disaster funds to provide mental health support services to Michigan residents who are understandably struggling to cope with the emotional distress from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, as well as those that have been affected by the flood in mid-Michigan. Funded by FEMA with training provided by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, the grant program is managed by an emergency behavioral health task force within the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Today's agenda will provide some additional information about COVID-19 as well as information about the vaccine, an overview of what the Stay Well program is, provide you with coping techniques, and then invite you to come back to us for a discussion at a later time. People with COVID-19 have reported a wide range of symptoms ranging from mild to severe. Symptoms generally appear 2 to 14 days after exposure to the virus. For older adults, symptoms are often different than those of younger populations. We know that COVID-19 is typically identified by three major symptoms: fever, persistent cough, and shortness of breath. Older adults, the group that's at most risk for severe complications, may not experience those symptoms specifically. Instead, seniors may feel off or not acting like themselves after being infected by the coronavirus. These symptoms are often vague: an increase in fatigue, a decrease in appetite, or becoming disoriented are all really good examples of this general feeling of being unwell. Dizziness, falls, and confusion have also been reported in relation to the COVID-19 illness within seniors. The suspected reason for experiencing symptoms differently than other aged individuals really has to do with how older bodies respond to illness and infection. To protect yourself and others, here are some practical tips. Wash your hands often or use hand sanitizer. Practice social distancing, avoiding small indoor spaces. Cover your mouth and nose with cloth face coverings and when around others. Cover coughs and sneezes. Clean and disinfect high touch surfaces and monitor your health. We understand that some people may be concerned about getting vaccinated now that the COVID-19 vaccines are available both in the US and in Michigan. While more COVID-19 vaccines are being developed as quickly as possible, routine processes and procedures remain in place to ensure the safety of any vaccine that's authorized or approved for use. Again, safety remains a top priority, and there are many great reasons to get vaccinated. Some of those are listed here on the screen. The COVID-19 vaccine will help to keep you from getting COVID-19. The vaccine is a safer way to help build protection. There's a lot of research that's happening right now in understanding how long your natural immunity lasts for versus the immunity gained when utilizing the vaccine. Stay tuned to updated information either through michigan.gov or following other credible resources such as the CDC or the World Health Organization. And lastly, we need as many tools as possible to help us end this pandemic, and the vaccine is a huge step for us. If you're wondering about when and where you can get the vaccine, Michigan is following the Center for Disease Control and Prevention recommendations for the distribution of the vaccine. For the most up-to-date information, please visit michigan.gov/COVID vaccine. If you have additional questions and need to speak with someone, please call the COVID hotline number, which is 1-888-535-6136, and hit prompt number 5. Vaccine development typically takes many years. However, scientists had already begun research for the coronavirus vaccines during previous outbreaks caused by related coronaviruses. So, SARS may be one that you recall, the severe acute respiratory syndrome from a few years ago. That earlier research provided a head start for rapid development of the vaccines to protect against infection with COVID-19. No steps were skipped in the development of this vaccine, but modifications were made to the process to help shorten that timeline without sacrificing safety. Some additional vaccine facts is that the COVID-19 vaccine will not give you COVID-19. There is not a live virus within that vaccine. The vaccines will not cause you to test positive on COVID-19 viral tests. Those are looking for a current infection. People who have gotten sick with COVID-19 may still benefit from getting vaccinated. Again, there's a lot of research that's happening and undergoing and to understand more about how long that natural immunity lasts if you have already been infected with the virus, and how the vaccine can complement that. And lastly, the vaccine is free of charge. So I'd like to share a little bit more information about the Stay Well program with you. And this is our PSA. You may have seen this already, but I'd love to share it with you again.
Many people are feeling overwhelmed and struggling with mental wellness these days. So be kind to your mind. Give yourself permission to breathe. Share your feelings. You are not alone. Have hope. Talk to a Stay Well counselor for free confidential help 24/7 through the COVID-19 hotline.
The purpose of the Stay Well Counseling Program is a program that is designed to support Michiganders' mental health, offering free, confidential, 24/7 counseling services to anyone that may be experiencing distress related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The program itself really takes kind of a two-pronged approach at reaching individuals specifically. So we have looked at targeting populations that may experience distress in different ways, or they may experience more distress than another population. These targeted populations are listed here on the screen, but again, the program is for everyone within the state of Michigan. Because outreach specialists can't perform their work in person during the pandemic, a variety of other methods to reach vulnerable groups are being used. We're partnering with community-based organizations, houses of worship, COVID testing sites, and creating and marketing and hosting psychoeducational webinars like the one that you're viewing today. They're also providing online and printed materials with helpful tips for staying mentally well, and they can assist in presenting to support groups as well as providing information on scheduled support groups that we're also offering. Our goal is really to do three main things. It's to validate, to normalize, and to humanize the response to this pandemic. Everyone's hard is hard right now, and we have to acknowledge that. We want to encourage individuals to utilize the Stay Well counseling line. This is free counseling services that are completely confidential that you can use at any time that's convenient for you or when you may be feeling increased distress. Also providing you with educational materials through a variety of media to promote good mental health services. We also want to help connect you with peers that may be experiencing some similar distresses as you, to help you find a support group and support network. And through that, we have support groups that are running as well. We'll talk about those a little bit later on. Dr. Peinels, who is a psychiatrist and the medical director for behavioral health through the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, shared this quote early on within the pandemic. Emerging or lingering anxiety, distress, irritability, and loss of hope are important feelings to recognize in ourselves and others, and it can help to talk to someone. If it's helpful, the counselors can also provide callers with referrals to local mental health agencies and substance use disorder support services. The Stay Well Project is here to help everyone that's currently being affected by the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a state of disaster in our communities, leaving lives changed and futures uncertain. Even if you've not suffered directly from the coronavirus, no one who experiences a disaster is untouched by it. For many, a disaster continues as a very real presence even long after it's passed. Feelings of sadness, depression, frustration, anger, and anxiety are common, and it's not unusual for these feelings to last for many months. Learning to recognize the normal reactions and emotions that occur can help you better understand these feelings and become more comfortable and effective in coping with them. We really just want to encourage you all to call the Stay Well Counseling line. We know that health is not defined just by our physical well-being. Health and wellness are multidimensional and include physical, emotional, career, intellectual, environmental, spiritual, and social aspects of our lives. Each one of these dimensions are a part of our quality of life. And if an area is neglected for a period of time at all, you may see a negative effect to your overall health. Today, we're not going to touch on all of these, but we will focus on physical, emotional, social, and occupational health. So we hear this question a lot. It's normal to be worried right now, right? Well, yes, absolutely. Worry is normal. Under normal circumstances, individuals experience worry. It may be being unable to afford living expenses, medications, being worried about being victimized or having to be dependent on others. It may be just worried in general because of the day-to-day busyness that we can experience. Many of these already present fears are now being amplified because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's important to pay attention to these worries. If they're interfering with your ability to do everyday activities, eating properly, sleeping, reading, reaching out to friends and family, please do not hesitate. A Stay Well counselor is ready to listen. We know that more than half of Americans are reporting that their mental health has been negatively impacted because of the pandemic due to worry and stress over the virus. As the pandemic wears on, it's likely the mental health burden will increase as measures taken to slow the spread of the virus, such as social distancing, business, school closures, shelter in place orders, lead to greater isolation and potential financial distress. Though necessary to prevent loss of life due to COVID-19, these public health measures expose people of all ages to isolation. Feelings of anxiety are increasingly common as people are fearful of themselves or loved ones falling ill and are really uncertain of the long-term repercussions of the pandemic. The Stay Well program exists to help people of all ages cope with the reactions and feelings, and offering resources that we hope to be helpful to you. While we've been discussing the effects of the pandemic on individuals' mental health, it's important to note that mental health symptoms can lead to serious physical health complications. Research shows a high connection between poor mental health and poor cardiovascular health, chronic fatigue, high blood pressure, and gastrointestinal issues. Talking to a Stay Well counselor, participating in a support group, or receiving some of the psychoeducational materials, including coping strategies, may often prevent long-term mental health complications such as post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression, as well as physical complications too. There are many other factors that can impact mental health and have worsened with the pandemic, such as decreases in motivation, productivity, team morale, and a work-life balance, and an increase in stress at work, especially for those that are working on site. Black and Latino people are disproportionately employed in jobs that require them to work on site and are now considered to be essential, which may contribute to an increase in reported mental or behavioral health symptoms. 37.8% of whites work on-site jobs compared to 44.2% of Blacks and 52.8% of Latinos. Whether you're going to work or working from home, the COVID-19 pandemic has probably changed the way you work or if you're able to work. Fear and anxiety about COVID-19 and other strong emotions can be overwhelming, and workplace stress can lead to burnout. Research from the Henry J. Kaiser Family Foundation shows that job loss is associated with increased depression, anxiety, distress, and low self esteem, and may lead to higher rates of substance use disorder and suicide. Some recent polling data shows that more than half of the people who lost income or employment reported negative mental health impacts from worry and stress over the coronavirus. Lower income people reported higher rates of major negative health impacts compared to those of higher income people. The Stable Project is here to help individuals cope with these emotions and stress. How you cope can affect your well being, the well being of the people you care about, your workplace, as well as your community. During this pandemic, it is critical to recognize what stress looks like, take steps to build resilience and manage job stress, and know where to seek help. It seems like ages since we've started referring to life in these uncertain times. For months now, our routines have been disrupted and we've been forced to adapt. Anecdotally, one major consequence is a state of mental fatigue. It feels hard to concentrate for any length of time, as if we're in a collective state of near constant distraction. Well, there's a reason for this. It's a psychological theory that was originally applied in the context of learning that can help to explain why living in the age of COVID-19 may have really turned our minds to soup. It's called the cognitive load theory, or CLT, and it was first developed by the Australian educational psychologist John Sweller. Excuse me. Simply put, CLT characterizes our minds as information processing systems. When we're working on a problem, especially one that may be unfamiliar to us, we depend on our working memory, which is very limited both in its capacity and the length of time that it holds on to information. Typically, you hold no more than 5 items in your working memory at one time. The less familiar you are with a task, the more you depend on your working memory to help juggle that relevant information. In contrast, when you're an expert, most of what you need to know is stored in long-term memory, and you can complete these tasks on autopilot. So this is why it's so hard to focus during this era. There are new tasks and new stress levels. So trying to understand the different ways the pandemic could be playing havoc on your mental function. First, it's forcing you into new routines. It's robbed you of the ability to do things on autopilot. These adaptations force you out of autopilot and draw on your limited working memory capacity. In the jargon of cognitive load theory, the intrinsic cognitive load of much of what you do has increased. You're spending more of your life having to think deliberately and consciously, more like a novice than an expert, which is just exhausting in itself. Secondly, the research based in CLT has shown that emotions can interfere with your processing. So if you're anxious, for example, this is known to reduce working memory capacity, thus making it more difficult to work through any type of problem that requires conscious problem solving. What's happening now is that disruptions to life caused by the pandemic are forcing you to draw on your limited working memory more often and at a time when you're more stressed and anxiety levels are raised, or you're juggling multiple tasks and commitments. You have diminished working memory capacity. It's really the worst of both worlds, and it's another reason why you may be feeling mentally drained. Ordinarily, in a time of upheaval, we can adjust quickly and the cognitive load becomes more manageable again. What's striking about the life in the era of COVID-19 is that the situation keeps changing. Governments around the world are constantly rolling out new, more complex restrictions, travel rules, self isolation instructions, symptom watch lists, new smartphone apps. Really, barely a day goes by that there isn't a new development for us to respond to. What you can do about this to help to increase your focus is really looking at planning and self discipline. So, interpreting the mentally draining effects of the pandemic life through the lens of the cognitive load theory points to some simple but effective remedial strategies. First off, try to establish new routines and master them so that you're not constantly drawing on your working memory capacity for just everyday mundane tasks. Second, because we're living through an era of heightened anxiety and uncertainty, it's important to put extra effort into stress management so that your working memory isn't constantly overloaded by worry. This means eating well, exercising, and establishing a predictable bedtime routine, as well as finding time for activities that help you to relax. As far as your situation allows, work out contingency plans for different aspects of your life. Putting realistic preparations in place for feared scenarios can also be a really great anxiety reliever. Give your brain a break from the pandemic. Consider having days or at least whole afternoons and evenings where you avoid the news or talk of the pandemic. Finally, it's important to take the strain off of your working memory by tuning out any extraneous cognitive load. So this means putting greater effort into organizing your time and being disciplined about distractions. Aim to set aside realistic but dedicated times of the day for different tasks, whether work or domestic duties. So for instance, when you're working, don't have the news on in the background. Or if you're playing with your kids, don't have your cell phone right by your side to answer those work emails all the time. Allow your mind time to focus on one thing at a time, and you'll be rewarded by feeling less mentally exhausted. It looks like we're going to be in this state for a while. And while the constant anxiety and abnormality is mentally fatiguing, take comfort from the fact that you're not the only one that's feeling this way. All of our brains have limited processing capacity that's being stretched to the limit right now. But with some careful planning and self discipline, there are ways to reduce the cognitive load and also to rediscover your focus. So, knowing what the cognitive load theory is and why it may be hard to focus, we also need to look at what may be some common increases as to work related factors that may add to our stress levels throughout the pandemic. So, it may be concern about the risk of being exposed to the virus at work or bringing the virus to work if you work with vulnerable populations, taking care of personal and family needs while working, lack of access to the tools and equipment you need to perform your job. Maybe that feelings that you're not contributing enough to the work or guilt about not being on the front line while you're working. It may be uncertainty about the future of your workplace and or employment, as well as working irregular and longer hours. Researchers have been warning and imploring about the need for additional research and services now for and about a loneliness epidemic for some time. Initially, it was directed at older adults during the pandemic. The concern is really amplified and it's directed to everyone. The COVID 19 pandemic and resulting economic downturn have negatively affected many people's mental health and created new barriers for people that are already suffering from mental illness and substance use disorders. In a recent study, nearly half of adults in the United States reported that their mental health has been negatively impacted due to worry and stress over the virus. As this pandemic wears on, it's likely that the mental health burden will increase as measures taken to slow the spread of the virus, such as social distancing, um, continue. There's another broad body of research that links social isolation and loneliness to poor mental health. And recent data shows that significantly higher shares of people who were sheltering in place reported negative mental health effects than those that were not. As we look at physical health, we know worldwide there's been a decrease in physical activity by 40%. People are different, and not every positive activity or combination of activities will affect people in the same way. So, we each really need to do a self assessment. The shelter stay in place home directives have led to really significant decreases in physical activity. One facet of the stable program is to educate individuals on way to ensure physical health as well as mental health is improving or at least maintaining. We really encourage folks to get outside as much as possible, and that is as safely as that they're able to do. Even in those colder winter months, bundle up, and 5 to 10 minutes of fresh air will be so important for you. Thinking about emotional health, it's really important to focus on facts, not fears. So again, statistics show a nationwide increase in people dealing with mental health issues in the wake of the virus, as well as the secondary effects. Fear, worry, and stress are normal responses to perceived or real threats, and at times when we're faced with uncertainty or the unknown. So it's normal and it's understandable that people are experiencing fear in the context of COVID-19. Added to the fear of contracting COVID-19 are the significant changes to our daily lives as our movements are restricted in supports of efforts to contain and slow the spread of this virus. Faced with new realities of working from home, unemployment, homeschooling of children, lack of physical contact with other family members and friends, colleagues, it's important that we look after our mental health. All of us have been and are being impacted because of COVID-19. This virus does not discriminate. However, there are some groups that are and will experience more hardships than others. It's imperative that all Michiganders know that they're not alone. There are resources to help and to assist in normalizing these feelings because they're shared and at some point in time by all Michiganders. We know that this virus isn't going anywhere anytime soon. And in the duration while we wait, it's important to have resources to help individuals cope. So, what is crisis counseling? Crisis counseling really assists individuals with coping and support after any type of crisis. So, crisis counseling is brief and it's time limited with specific goals for achieving stability, increasing an internal sense of empowerment and safety, and also locating appropriate resources. Typically, this type of counseling can range from 15 minutes to 2 hours and can be provided in a series of sessions. The caller, when you're calling, you're really setting the pace for how long you talk and how in depth you speak as well. This is not a substitute for long-term therapy or psychiatric care. Crisis counseling can provide a safe outlet for immediate relief. The crisis counselors that you may speak with often utilize psychological first aid, which focuses on reducing acute distress, restoring physical and mental stabilization, and integrates pro-social coping skills. Professionals trained in mental health first aid really help with assisting and identifying and responding to any signs of perhaps or perceived mental illness, substance use. So, for example, someone experiencing a panic attack or experiencing some type of strong negative, strong negative feelings. The crisis counseling program follows key principles that make it different from other support programs. So it's strength based. So, really, we're wanting to promote resilience, empowerment, and recovery. It's anonymous. Crisis counselors do not classify, label, or diagnose people. There are no records or case files that are kept. It's outreach oriented. So the counselors are delivering services within the community. They're calling us to be able to utilize those services. It's also conducted in non-traditional settings. So crisis counselors, you're able to speak to someone while they're in their home, or maybe they're driving, or, they really can be anywhere to be able to access services. And this program is designed to strengthen existing community support systems. So it supplements but does not replace any existing community systems that are already in place. If you're listening today and you're from an organization and you're interested in partnering with us or wanting to share this information with others that you're either working with, or it may be faith-based organizations, on the slide here are some ways that we would love to partner with you. You can reach me directly. My email information is posted on the Stay Well webpage, and we would love to learn a little bit more about how we can work with you. We really just want to urge you to be kind to your mind. This is an unprecedented crisis, and it really presents unprecedented risks to the rights and safety of everyone. Thank you so much for your time and attention as we've presented the Stay Well counseling line and hopefully provided some useful tips to maintain yours and your family's emotional wellness. So if you are interested in learning more or speaking to someone specifically, please do not hesitate to reach out. There's always someone to listen by calling the counseling line. We have support groups that are offered for tailored groups, and you can find that information on our webpage, which is michigan.gov/stay well. Thank you again for your time, and we look forward to working with you.